Being a model sounds like a dream job, but the reality for child and teen models is far from perfect. Just wait until you find out what regular childhood rite of passage a famous child model got penalized for. If this is your first time visiting our channel, make sure you subscribe. And while you're at it, check out our latest addition to the family, The Trendy. Today, we're sharing the sad truth about being a child model. Your body must not change. Imagine being a normal, healthy, growing child and being told that your body must not change, and that if you gain a couple of centimeters around your waist, you'll be fired. That's what happens to some child models. Many models of all ages have terms written into their contracts about their body shape. It's hard enough for adults to completely control their dimensions, but it's impossible for children to do so. They haven't stopped growing yet. Former child model Sara Ziff revealed to CNN that she's seen agency contracts that state she couldn't gain more than 2 centimeters on her hips. She claims that it's obviously highly problematic for a child to sign such a contract. That's because you're basically asking that girl to have an eating disorder. A child's body will inevitably develop and change. And Sara says that if a child model has success at a young age for an adolescent physique, that child will be pressured to maintain those measurements. Ziff set up the organization Models Alliance to support those who work in the fashion industry. Meredith Wright was also a model under the age of 18 at one time. Then she went undercover as an adult model in Japan to expose the sad truth of being a child model in her documentary film agency. She interviewed an Estonian teen model who was sent home after 2 weeks overseas for gaining weight around her waist. You have no rights. Young actors, dancers, and musicians are covered by labor law and regulations as child performers in New York. But did you know that most child models don't have the same rights and protection across much of the world? These regulations include some basic rights, as restricting working hours, allowing a break every 4 hours, and ensuring at least 15% of earnings are paid directly by the employer into the child's trust account. There are also rules about chaperones, proof of good health, and education provision for child performers in New York State. This all sounds like a given, but across Europe, Asia, and many parts of the US, these safeguards are not in place. Not just child models, but all models lack the legal protections that many other workers have. This is because agencies tell models they are independent contractors, so they aren't able to unionize, nor are they protected from workplace harassment. And they have no minimum wage rights. That's bad enough for a mature adult. So how awful is it for a child? Fortunately, if you're a child model in New York, you're officially considered a child performer. But it wasn't until labor advocacy group Models Alliance championed the Child Model Act in 2013. The alliance helped to make sure that these child labor rights were extended to children who live or work as models in New York State. Models Alliance went on to introduce the Child Performer Protection Act in 2015, which was the first federal protections in the U.S. for child models and other performers. Working long hours. It's incredible to think that child models in many places don't have the same rights as adult workers when it comes to the number of hours they work. The Child Performers Protection Act of 2015 sought to extend federal workplace safety regulations to child performers. This included limiting working hours. It also included guaranteeing financial protection in the form of proper payment. It also put in place a system to hold employers and contractors liable for any harassment that occurs on their sets. You'd think that having a break every 4 hours was standard practice, but that only has to be offered in the places like New York, where it's part of the labor law for children working in the artistic and creative industries like modeling. For child models that don't work in places where their rights have been legally protected, there are no restrictions on how long they work. Many child models are faced with pressures like long working hours for no money. Instead, they often get given unwanted clothes as a form of payment, which is hardly a fair exchange for a hard day's work. And when they have agreed on a fee for their time, they often have difficulty collecting their paychecks, which takes us to our next entry. Pay disputes. When you're a child, you don't have as much confidence as an adult to stand up for yourself. Anyone under the age of 16 is going to struggle when it comes to dealing with money. Victoria's Secret model Bahati Prinsloo was discovered at the tender age of 15. She has spoken about what it's like to be working in the industry so young. The model revealed, "No one helps models figure out what they should do with their money. It's especially hard for underage models." She went on to explain that young models just have to figure it out on their own, which makes it very stressful. It becomes even more stressful when there are pay disputes, or when the money doesn't actually make it into their trust account. When filming her documentary Agency about child models working abroad, Meredith Wright witnessed contracts being voided, mostly because a model dared to question why her payment and pocket money were being withheld. It turns out it was to discourage models who've gained weight from buying food. Sara Ziff has spoken about the loophole that modeling agencies in New York use to escape regulations. Many claim they're management companies rather than talent agencies, and therefore avoid the requirement to be licensed to have a 10% cap on commissions. Ziff herself had trouble getting paid money she was owed by her agency. She ended up leaving and had a lawyer write a letter threatening legal action. Not many child models would have the confidence to take such a stand. Missing school. Skipping classes because you have a modeling job may sound like a dream come true, but school days are some of the best times in many people's lives, and child models that work a lot miss out on a lot of school. And it's not just the social side they don't get to experience fully, it's also their education. When child models are given the same rights under the labor law for child performers in New York, their education was safeguarded. Under the law, parents or guardians have to provide evidence that the child model is getting a proper education. If the underage model misses school because of work, the employer has to provide a tutor. Employers also have to submit a notice to the Department of Labor at least 2 days in advance of the event. This means that child models can't be pulled out of school on short notice. But in some U.S. states and other countries where these laws aren't in place, child models' education is not safeguarded. Sara Ziff recommends that anyone interested in modeling should hold off until they've finished high school. As you are always on call to your agency and bookings are often made last minute, it's not a job that's easy to juggle with school. Homesickness. Many young models get sent on overseas assignments without their parents, despite being under 16. While that might sound like an amazing adventure at first glance, this is no summer camp. These girls aren't looked after by friendly counselors and chaperones. They're often left to fend for themselves in unfamiliar countries. Meredith Wright's documentary, Agency, tells the story of models like 13-year-old Canadian Holly Angus. She was so homesick that she would cry herself to sleep every night and feel physically ill. The agency she worked for discouraged parents from accompanying their daughters abroad. Like many other agencies, they assured the parents that their young daughters would be chaperoned. But in cases like Holly's, there wasn't 24/7 care everywhere. Her apartment, her weekends, and even her photo shoots were unsupervised. That's shocking when you consider that she was only 13 and was expected to make her way in Japan on her own. This was also the case for a 14-year-old American girl called Laura, who admitted that she got lonely being away from home. She added, "It's a lot to take on at 14. Working for 18 hours over the course of one weekend and modeling wedding dresses while kissing a 23-year-old male model certainly sounds like an inappropriate situation for a 14-year-old to find herself in, but sadly, it isn't uncommon." Having to grow up too fast. It's not surprising that young models feel out of place when they're catapulted into a very adult world. Homesickness is just one of the struggles models face. Even Bahati Prinsloo found it tough when she started out as a teen model. The Victoria's Secret star explained, "It's a lot of traveling, a lot of time away from family, and a lot of dealing with stuff you shouldn't be dealing with at that age." Sara Ziff agrees that modeling is a grown-up industry with adult pressures, and she should know given that she started her modeling career at 14. She thinks it's fine for young models to do the odd catalog job now and then, but when they are flung into working as adults, they often don't have the maturity to handle those situations. While most teen girls are having fun with friends at the mall and the movies, young models are dealing with adult photographers and casting agents, being constantly rejected and told to look a certain way. Canadian model Coco Roca was scouted at 14 and started modeling at 15, which she now believes is way too young to be a model, and feels her early career was too much for her. These teen girls are taken out of high school, away from their parents, and put into an industry that treats them as adults when they aren't ready. Problems later in life. Unsurprisingly, some young models find they have difficulties later in life as a result of these experiences during their formative years. Models Alliance thinks that this may have long-lasting repercussions on their health, well-being, and careers. Jennifer Skye is one former child model that knows all about that. She wrote about the symptoms she developed due to her years as a child model. She suffered from hyper-awareness, panic, and disassociation, which was eventually diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder. She touches on the countless questionable things that happened to her during her time as a teen model, and explains how her naturally outgoing personality changed. She felt disconnected, hollow, and was having nightmares. It got so bad that she quit modeling at the age of 17 and went on to become an actress. Not only did she have a complex PTSD to contend with, but also a lack of sympathy. No one ever connects being a too young fashion model with trauma. At 15, she left her small southern town to spend her summer break modeling in Japan. The agency promised chaperones and supervision, but she was left to her own devices to navigate the confusing city. When she moved to New York at 16, she was similarly left to figure it out alone. There were no agents there to help, and she was stuck in an apartment with other underage models. After her PTSD diagnosis, she found ways to cope with the condition that her teen modeling years had inflicted. Dealing with controversy. Very famous child models receive a lot of criticism. Although the disapproval is typically aimed at the parents and agencies, the children themselves will often feel the brunt of it. There are high-profile examples like Thylane Blondeau, who was once called the most beautiful girl in the world. At the age of 10, the model caused controversy when she posed provocatively in a Vogue Paris editorial wearing heavy makeup and heels. That kind of controversy is hard for anyone to deal with, let alone such a young child. The French model first appeared on the runway at the tender age of 4, walking for Jean-Paul Gaultier in Paris. Or how about Kristina Pimenova, the Russian model who started in the industry before her 4th birthday. She was also once dubbed the most beautiful girl in the world at just 8 years old. Both she and her mother were criticized for how she was presented on her social media account. There's a lot of condemnation over young girls being shown in a grown-up light. Cindy Crawford's daughter, Kaia Gerber, caused controversy for simply posing in a skirt. The problem was that some considered the skirt to be too short and the pose to be inappropriate. The supermodel decided to put her 10-year-old's modeling career on hold after that experience. She told the Daily Front Row that her daughter was just too young to model. You're penalized for regular childhood experiences. There are certain rites of passage many of us go through during our childhood. Things like losing a tooth, scraping a knee when we fall off a bike, or wearing braces. If you're a regular child, these things are no big deal. But if you're a child model, you can kiss your modeling contract goodbye. Linnea Grace knows about this all too well. The child model from San Francisco started out with Ford Modeling Agency when she was just 3 years old. After getting a work permit signed by her school and signing up for casting websites, she got her first shoot with Macy's. So far, so good. But after 3 years, Ford stopped representing kids in her area, and she had to get braces. So she pretty much stopped modeling. Once her braces were off, Linnea signed with another modeling agent after a few months. Her first job back was with Ralph Lauren, and then a month later she shot Avicii's Wake Me Up music video. But if her braces hadn't come off by then, chances are Linnea wouldn't have gotten the modeling work she did. There are so many sad truths about being a child model, and this intense focus on a child's appearance has to be one of the worst things about it. How young do you think is too young to start modeling? Let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for tuning in, and please give this video a big thumbs up.